for BRS. Discussion on the motion. All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The motion is carried. All right, thank you, Ms. Hatcher. Now, the second part of that, as far as the county employees are concerned.
The second part to this was whether the General Assembly came up at the last day and decided that there had been much discussion about the county employees paying 5% and getting a 5% mandatory raise, school employees being allowed to do 1% and 1% raise. The last day, the flexibility was added for county employees to have that same flexibility of 1 and 1. We had recommended to you originally 1 and 1.5 to kind of hold the employees at the same pay level. And at our last meeting, we talked about 5% fully funding it and a 6% raise, which is a 1% overall raise, but it won't work out to that. And the reasoning behind that is all new hires into the system July 1 that come to work for the county will be paying the 5% out of their pay. So then it'll be setting up various classifications among employees that get hired. And I think that's what the schools were thinking too, is why they had recommended that they were going to go 5 and 6 as well, because it creates an issue down the road if you're taking 1% out of 1 and 5 out of everybody new, and then the next year it's 2 and still 5 out of everybody new. It causes some issues with your pay scale, if nothing else. So that was our recommendation. It's certainly your prerogative. The least you have to do, we're required to do, is 1 and 1 up to the full 5. But if you do 1 and 1, you're going to be doing 1 and 1 over the next 4 years as well, or 1 and plus. I mean, you can do more than 1, but you've got to do the mandatory 1% raise.
Here's where
and Mr. Cully,
Mr. Underwood?
Mr. Cully, again, your recommendation is that we do the 5 and 6.
5 and 6, yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Are there questions of Mr. Cully? Board comments?
And in this case, we are just talking about, as we did
County
the certified rate, we're talking about county and schools. Now we're just talking specifically about
County and
employees.
social services.
Okay, and that's where you gave us the $108,000 number. Okay, but in a previous work session with the schools, which you were there, they said they needed 1.7 million to go 6 and 5. Right?
Now, I remember a number in that range. I don't know exactly. Obviously, I haven't looked at their books or their payroll to get to that number. But
I think that was my understanding based on the numbers they gave us at that meeting, or the numbers the superintendent gave us at that meeting. They wanted 1.7. So when we made our motion last meeting to fund 1.7 million through the county's 11 million plus contribution, that should take care of their 6 and 5 raise.
along with the 1.5 million they were getting from the state in new funds.
Okay.
Whether that leaves them 200,000 short, or whether other changes in their budget from this current budget to the next budget by change out in retiring teachers and retiring folks and new folks coming in, I can't answer. But
we can specifically say, like we said at the last meeting, my motion was, of the county local contribution, we make sure we give the schools specifically for teachers and support personnel the 6% raise to cover their 5% increase.
But unfortunately, you don't have the authority the school board does as to what they do with all of that money.
Right.
Some of the state money gets set aside into various programs. The local money goes in, and the school board has to decide. You can say that you've placed it there, but the school board would get to decide whether, somebody's hired, somebody's retained, or a raise is given. Those type of things are school board decisions.
But that was, once again, for everybody, that was the intent of my motion, to make sure we provided funds for raises. Okay. All right, thank you for clarifying that.
Other questions? Other comments? How does the board wish to deal with this issue?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we do the 5 and 6 contribution as requested by our county administrator.
Second.
Motion been made by Mr. Underwood, seconded by Mr. Black, that we approve the 5 and 6 pay raise for county employees. They will We have to give them 5% because of the reduction of 5% to they have to pay for VRS, and then would include a 1% increase in salary to help offset some of the reductions that they'll see due to the decrease in pay because of FICA and other taxes that would be increased at this point. Is there discussion on that motion? All in favor vote by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The motion is carried. Item number 5, proposed increases to building and planning fees. Mr. Fincham.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, you have in your packet a proposed fee schedule for the Department of Planning and Community Development, which covers the fee schedules for planning, zoning, erosion and sediment control, as well as building inspections. This item was initially brought to the board, I believe it was last September, and a public hearing was held by the board. At that time, there was a request to defer action on this item to allow staff to meet with Mr. Akers and address some concerns he had related to the fees. Mr. Akers and I were finally able to meet a couple of weeks ago and finalize those discussions related to the fee schedule. And the proposed schedule that you have before you now reflects the modifications that we made to address the concerns raised by the board at the public hearing, as well as in subsequent meetings with Mr. Akers. All of the proposed modifications to fees were actually reductions in fees and not increases, which would have required another public hearing. Collectively, with all of the proposed fee increases across the board, we estimate that this would generate approximately $40,000 to $45,000 in additional revenue, even at current activity levels in the county, which would help get us up closer to being full, self-supporting with less reliance on county tax revenues to cover operations. And with that, I'll answer any questions that the board may have.
Questions of the board? Comments of the board? Mr. Black?
Mr. Finchman, how do these fees, when you made these fee schedules, how does it compare to other counties? Are we right in line with, I mean, is this right in line with, like, say, especially like King George's and the Oranges?
We're fairly comparable to the smaller counties. Obviously, we're nowhere close to a Stafford or Spotsylvania, which has much, higher staff and much higher staff costs. Some fees are actually a little bit, perhaps above King George's fee schedule. Most of the builders we've talked to have actually said we continue to be lower than virtually all the counties and probably should have raised the fees even more. We understand that they're not the ones pulling all the permits. We have residents pulling permits and doing work themselves as well. So, and we have to look out for them as well.
Thank you.
Other questions? I believe this public hearing has been held, so it is now time for a vote on these proposed changes. Is there a motion to approve the changes as presented by staff?
So moved, Mr. Chairman. Second.
Motion made by Mr. Underwood, seconded by Mr. Taylor, that we approve the building department fees as presented by staff. Discussion on the motion? All in favor, vote by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The motion is carried. Thank you, Mr. Fincher. Number 6. You're up next, right? Discussion of Virginia Game and Inland Fisheries request for the use of county-owned land for canoe boat landing. Mr. Fincher.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we have tonight with us Mr. Larry Hart from the Virginia Department of Games and Inland Fisheries. This item was first introduced to the board several months ago. Mr. Hart was not able to attend the meeting that night, but he is here tonight to discuss their proposal for expanded river access along the Mattaponi River and to discuss that with you.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
evening.
Mr. Chairman, board members, and Administrator Coley, I'm Larry Hart, and I'm the Director of the Infrastructure Division for the Department of Game and Inland Fisheries. And I appreciate this opportunity to appear before you tonight to bring a request for your consideration, a cooperative agreement with our agency that would allow us to use part of a small piece of land you own on the Mattaponi River, and it's between Route 722 and the Mattaponi River, just across the bridge from Milford, and with the idea that we would be able to develop a light boat, a hand-launched boat access site on that piece of property. On the one hand, we hear from some of the folks who like to float and fish and just enjoy the river that they would really appreciate the opportunity to get on and off of the river in managed and controlled access sites. And on the other hand, I hear that there may be some difficulties encountered by the folks when they're floating that river at certain times of the year. And some of the difficulties that's been discussed with me is that there may be some of the passages that may be blocked by fallen trees. I've also heard concerns about landowners concerned on adjacent properties about trespass, about people that might be getting out on their properties. I think these issues can be resolved. On rivers like the Mattaponi, there's always been trees that fall across the river, and people who use these type of rivers are aware of that, and they know how to cross these obstacles. And as far as the adjoining landowners are concerned, the properties can be posted along the river so that the boaters would know that they're not welcomed on those properties. Providing opportunities for people to enjoy the river, to appreciate it, to protect the river is important in the long run. People who learn to enjoy that river are more likely to protect it and actually work for it. And we'd like to bring those opportunities to people in your area. These opportunities for them to access the river and enjoy it. And so I'm here tonight asking for you to consider making available to us a small part of this piece of land that you own across the bridge from Milford. The property is currently utilized as an unimproved boating access site. So people are using it right now as simply an unimproved site. We envision it could be developed as a takeout site for a boating access that we plan to build up on our property at the Page Road. It's on the Mattaponi Wildlife Management Area. So if we could put that one in, this would be a convenient place for people to take out about 5 miles downstream. I recently had the privilege of floating that river and enjoying it. I tell you, I found it really, really, really nice. The scenery was great. I had a good fishing day, catching something over 50 fish of 5 different species, and I'm not the greatest of fishermen, but I had a very enjoyable day there. There was only one place where I had to get out, and there was a blockage there with some small poles, and I used just a bow saw that I had with me and cut one of the poles, and we were able to pass right on through and float without having to get out of our boats. And we didn't have to get out on anyone else's property. And I brought with me tonight 7 different sets of photos, just 5 pictures each, that just kind of give you an idea of what this river looks like in this section, if that would be useful to you. If we're successful in developing this site, it may also one day become a place where people could put in and then float further downstream. That's yet to be determined. The site is parcel 94A on your tax map number 55, and it consists of 2.8 acres. And we may need, for our purposes, about an acre of that, somewhere thereabouts. We wouldn't need all of it. If this is approved, we would envision that we would construct an entrance off of Route 522, a gravel parking lot, and a trail or steps to the water for hand-launched boat. We do not envision any type of boat ramp for trailer boats there. The entrance will probably be moved a little bit to the west of where it is currently to improve the sight distance. Our department would be responsible for obtaining the necessary permits to perform this construction, to do the construction, to provide the maintenance of the site, and to share policing of that site with your sheriff's office. We have, in fact, our board today approved funding for this, should you folks approve it. So we will have it in the fiscal year 13 budget for this development, if you agree with it. And we already have the funding set aside for development of the hand launch site up on our wildlife management area at Page Road. Since the property is government owned, we could develop there under just a cooperative agreement. We generally ask for them for 20 to 25 years, which would be the life of the project. We have these agreements with other counties, and we provided access in other places. And I provided a copy of or sample of one of these agreements to your then acting administrative partner some time ago. I'd like to read a section of just a portion of Section 28.2, 2000 of the Code of Virginia, which states in part, all beds of the bays, rivers, creeks, and the shores of the sea within the jurisdiction of the Commonwealth, not covered by special grant or compact according to law, shall remain the property of the Commonwealth, and may be used as a common by all the people of the Commonwealth for the purpose of fishing, fowling, hunting, and taking and catching oysters and other shellfish. And what we would like to do is, with your concurrence, is provide these opportunities for the folks in your area to enjoy this section of the river. And I'm available for questions if you have any.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Board members have questions? Mr. Hart?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Seeley?
Mr. Hart, I've floated this piece of water many, many, many times. And the lower the water gets, the more the snags there are. And there are some property owners along that stretch of river beyond what you own as the state that are not going to take kindly to anybody getting out. We've got people who own property on the Rappahannock River that's not developed and constantly have camping problems with big orange signs saying no trespassing, no stopping. And people camp there all the time. And I don't know that the sheriff wants to have to answer the calls that are going to come to some of the sites where that's going to be. And those landowners are not going to be very understanding at all. And that's my true concern, is that I know how people are. Let's stop here. Let's eat. Let's get out of the boat. We're stuck. We've got to pull this boat around. And those landowners are going to be very wise to that, and they're going to be down there. We're going to have nothing but issues. And that is my primary concern. Once they leave your land, which is only about a half mile down the river, we have nothing but issues with landowners on both sides. And until we get some sort of cooperative agreement with them and they understand what we're going to do, I can't see us moving forward without having a lot of issues. And I have true concerns. And it's taken me a lot longer to float and fish that if I put in at 6:05 and get out at 2:07, you can be all day, especially in July or August. It will, daylight hours, you better know where you're going and what you're doing. So I see the water's pretty high here, higher than I've ever been down that river on. So I want to exercise extreme caution when everybody says a boat launch here and a pull out here, it's 5 miles, no problem. No problem, maybe in April, May, early June, but July, August, September, if it's dry, it's nothing but log jam after log jam of pulling the boat out and going around, and we're going to have problems.
Sir.
Other comments? I guess.
How's he address those?
Well, my question is, how do we address them on other rivers? This is not the first river that's going to be floated, and North Anna is certainly floated all the time, and it may be the first one on Mattapanai, I don't know. But I remember just a few short years ago, this board was supporting a boat landing and takeout in Caroline County. Well, also at the North Anna, at the fairgrounds down there. We tried, and they did. They agreed to give the county money, I mean, not money, but land, in order to have a boat landing there, put in, takeout type of deal. So I guess my concern is the fact that it is a need for people of Caroline County. I've heard many people say that they would like to see a way of getting on to the various rivers in the county and to float them and to go down them. And I just think that we need to look at how other how other rivers are being taken care of in other counties. This is certainly not the first one.
It certainly is not the first one, and the concerns about low water and logs, that happens in a lot of places, even the Shenandoah River and places like that. I go back to that people who are familiar with this type of boating are knowledgeable in those kind of conditions and have developed ways that if they do go floating, that they can go ahead and overcome those obstacles. I personally do that regularly.
Other questions from board members? Comments?
I guess I have a question of the sheriff.
Go ahead, Mr. Underwood.
Sheriff Lipper, do you see any issue with enforcement or any issues here? Based on your years of law enforcement experience?
I really do not, because it's no different than whether there's a boat landing there that people would know that's there, they're still going to do it. And we get calls all the time of somebody missing on the river. We get it at North Anna, where they'll put in. We've had that most recently. The fact that it's 5 miles and to be able to educate our people, to let them know that you can put in up here in 5 miles, there is an exit for you that's publicly known, might be beneficial. Now, I know when the water rises and lowers, that type of thing, but when it lowers down, you still have the river bed that they can walk around and not get on anyone's property. So,
But I think the landowners own to the low water mark, so if they're out of the water, they're on somebody's land, is my understanding.
My question.
Is that not true, Mr.?
I don't think so. I will look at that, but I don't think so, Mr. Seeley, and I will check into that because the river is from where it's flowing, and the fact that it tapers down, you're telling me, and again, I'll check because I really don't know.
It's just like a tidal river. You own to either low mean or high mean, and if you own to low, it's anytime it's low, your property line goes all the way to the low water. So if the river is really lower, the water's blown out, you own a lot further.
Again, I'll have to check, and I think it would be more beneficial than it would be harmful. If you want to find out how many people own on that part of the river, and you want to go by and see if they would voluntarily or have any problems with it, I think that's for Game and Inland Fisheries to do, not us.
Okay. Mr. Underwood, have you get your answer? Yeah.
Mr. Hart, just to
Yes.
similar questions. I'm just kind of curious. You purchased the 2,500 acres on Page Road from private citizen.
Yes, for corporate owners, yes.
Does the Commonwealth do anything like the federal government, and we would get payment in lieu of taxes?
That is an option. I know right now that we have timber harvest scheduled out there, and the county would get 25% of those proceeds.
Okay. But there's not necessarily, you're saying that's the only payment in lieu of taxes. So we just get timber harvest, probably $30,000.
I know there are provisions for payment in lieu of taxes. I'm not sure of what they are, but I know there are provisions in the code for payments in lieu of taxes.
Mr. Culley, would you find out what those are? And the last question is, you have, states in your letter that you said your department has $75,000 available to construct this boat ramp?
We have, I think it's actually more than that. The board approved a higher rate today. No, $75,000 was for the Page Road access site. They approved another amount, a smaller amount today for this lower site, should you all approve this request.
Oh, they approved a smaller amount, okay.
Yes, a smaller amount. The property there at Milford, it will not take the level of development that the one up at Page Road will.
Okay.
People are already using it, they're already driving in there.
And how long is that smaller amount of money going to be available? Is that through next fiscal year? Or is
Yes, it's through fiscal year 13, that's correct.
So we have basically
Starting
12 months to say yes to this
Yeah,
project?
starting in July, that money will be available through the following June.
Okay. Okay. So we have a little bit of leeway that we can investigate the things we're
Right.
looking for and not lose that money.
I had a gentleman behind me tell me that he is familiar with some of the issues about canoeing and kayaking on the smaller rivers, and he will make himself available to address some of your concerns should you choose to hear him.
All right. Mr. Black?
I got one question for you. It says it's in the 100-year floodplain.
Yes.
If there was a massive flood to come down that river in that area and wash out the the parking lot or the road, is that your guys' responsibility to replace?
Yes, it
on-
is.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Taylor, you have questions or comments?
No, I don't have questions at this time. Most of the questions I had have already been asked, so.
Does the board want to allow the gentleman to come and to address some of the issues that were mentioned about his concerns? Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name's Tom Miller. I live in New Kent County. I'm a board member of the Friends of the Rivers of Virginia and also a member of the Float Fishermen of Virginia and past president of Float Fishermen of Virginia and the proud recipient of the Randy Carter River Conservationist of the Year for efforts in scenic rivers designation. I've paddled the waters of Virginia for over 40 years. I'm very familiar with the issues on the Rappahannock. I've been there for probably 20 years. I don't know why, but the Rappahannock seems to be extremely unique in that sense regarding trespass issues and camping issues. I've not seen that same type of issue on any other river except the Rappahannock and the Rapidan. The North Anna, the South Anna, the Appomattox, the James. I've not seen the type of trespass issues that you were alluding to there. That's not to say you won't have it here, but from what I've seen, that Rappahannock is an exception to the rule, not the norm. You haven't lived on a dry river till you've walked the North Anna, okay? In the summer, it gets like rock bottom low. You have to walk most of it if you paddle it. And most canoeists are aware of that. As far as tree deadfalls, as Mr. Hart said, they know there's going to be deadfalls. Those that have paddled the Pamunkey or Dragon's Run in particular are very familiar with those type of floats. For the most part, your canoeing and kayaking personnel are not trespassers, are not litterers. They're stewards of the river, if anything. They're already taking out, I believe, at this location. Anyway, so both the FORVA, Friends of Virginia, the Rivers of Virginia, and the Float Fishermen of Virginia strongly support what the Game Commission is doing here. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Underwood?
Mr. Miller?
Mr. Miller?
Yes, Mr. Miller.
Come back to the podium.
The question about the property line when the water is high or low,
Generally, the gentleman's correct. You will get out to eat lunch. You generally try to get out on a sandbar because you know that's generally safe. We don't want to trespass as canoeists or kayaks. We don't want to agitate landowners. I have many horror stories from the Rappahannock and the Rapidan of landowners that we've talked to that are just disgusted with canoeists. But I've not had that experience on any other river, to be honest with you.
thank you.
You know, Mr. Hart, I believe the board, I think some board members have issues or have concerns about it. I think that we're going to talk about it.
Okay.
There's some board members that look favorably upon this project because it is one that we've been trying to find an outlet for the citizens of Caroline County to enjoy for a number of years. I know we have talked about this we talked about it for the North Anna River, we've talked about it for the Rappahannock River, and other rivers as well over the years that I've been on this board. So this is not new, and I think that now that we have an opportunity for that to happen, there are certainly some of us on this board that would like to see that take place. It appears it's going to take some work with the landowners, the discussion with some of the landowners, and let them know what's being done. I don't know whether you've contacted any of the landowners between your Page Road put-in and the 722 takeout as far as canoeists are concerned. Have you had any discussion with those landowners?
Not that low. We have talked with other landowners in the areas, but not that low on the river.
Okay. I think it's probably a good idea that if we can at least send them a letter, let them know that this is something that's being considered and looked upon, and then I think the board, they'll certainly let the board know as to what they
Okay. Is that
feel
something
about
the county would do of sending the letter, or would you be requesting
Yeah,
that we do that?
Which is the best, Mr. Fincham? The county take care of that, sending out a letter, or would it be better for the Virginia Game and Inland Fisheries to do that? Well, we'd certainly want to see the responses. I mean, there's no question. And
Yeah.
They could send a letter and copy us and ask the landowners to, copy us on any response as well as to them. Or we could send it and copy DGIF. It really makes no difference. I'm thinking since it's their request to the county, perhaps they should send a letter and just copy us on it. I'm sure either the board members or staff will receive comments from the affected property owners. Even if they don't contact DGIF, we can forward that to them. And I'll work with Mr. Hart to identify the property owners and assist him in a letter if he so desires.
Okay, so, Mr. Fincham will identify help identify the landowners on that stretch of the river and provide that information to you, and if your office
Okay.
could send the letters, that would be great.
Now, I'd be happy to appear for you again if you need me to
We
come
would
back.
like, once you have sent those letters out and have received some the responses back, and hopefully within 60 days, all this could take place, we would want you to come back.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Hart. Appreciate it. Mr. Miller, thank you. The next item on the agenda is the adoption of fiscal year 2012-2013 budget. Item number 7. Mr. Cully, are you going to present this, or is Mrs. Hatcher going to talk about this?
The both of us.
Okay. Tag team, go ahead.
We prepared a resolution that you have before you that actually includes, I had some others, but this one actually includes the 5 and 6 that you approved in the VRS. I had backup ones in case that didn't go. This does include the local amount of schools that were approved, and you see that if you turn over to page 3. We do not have the adopted school budget yet that includes this number. So as far as appropriating by category, you'll have to come back and adjust those numbers in July, but we've included it here as a negative $350,000 under those category. But once they adopt their budget with the category numbers in, then we could appropriate that. I have heard that there may be some interest in appropriating monthly, so if you want to do that, we'll have to take the appropriations from this resolution and change that a little bit. But this is your budget as we've worked on with all the cuts that were approved at the last meeting.
All right. Comments? Questions? Mr. Black?
Mr. Chairman, I thank you. Once again, I'm going to state my opposition to this budget on the grounds of the $350,000 cut to schools. I cannot vote for a budget that cuts the school system by $350,000 when I myself ran on a premise that I would do my best to help the schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Black. Other comments? Questions?
I have a question.
Mr. Seeley?
Page 4, profit fund, Ms. Hatcher.
Yes.
Can you tell me what that amount is for? Page 4, it says under other funds, 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth one down, profit fund, 186.
The 186 is 100 and trying to find the exact number. Most of it is a transfer of the Y proffers to the debt retirement fund.
Yeah, but isn't the debt service for the Y funding for interest only about $260,000 a year?
In the debt service fund, it shows a revenue source of capital contributions of $70,000 to cover the difference. Both revenue sources are in the debt retirement fund. The amount from the profit fund and the amount from the capital campaign. Outside source.
Do we have a separate account for outside sources for the YMCA?
it shows in your detailed budget, yes, as a line item.
So we can do a quarterly or a monthly accounting on that as well?
I don't have any control, or I don't see any of the monies through the capital campaign, no. I just have a line item which would record the revenue they give me up to the $70,000 that I have budgeted.
Okay.
Other questions? Mr. Thomas?
During our conversation when we were clarifying last meeting's motion, Mr. Cully said that we may not be able to ensure that the raises for teachers and support personnel were carried out because there's not a category? Or
We don't have the responsibility of the detail level of their budget to do that. So they will bring back to us, as you see on page 3, instruction, administration, health and attendance, pupil transportation, operation maintenance, and facilities. Teachers are in that instruction for the most part. Administration, health, attendance is nurses and administration and various people of transportation, obviously. Operation and maintenance and the facilities should be your electric bills and those type of things. They have to set what those priorities are with the total amount of money they get from local, state, and federal sources. And we cannot dictate to that level that they do what we want them to do. Like I said, they could...
So I can't win is what you're saying?
No, sir.
I want to give them a raise. I can't give them the money to say, here's the money for a raise. Do I have the ability to give money directly to employees of the school system?
No, sir.
I have the ability to give money directly to county employees,
That is correct.
but not directly to school employees.
They are employees of the school board, and we have to give the money to the school board that we agree on as a board. The state's already told us how much they're going to give, the feds, and then they get some other local sources. That becomes their combined budget. The school board is tasked by law to put it into those categories. And under instruction, that'll tell how many teachers they have and where they are on the pay scale. They have to do the minimum 1-and-1 raise. Hopefully they will have the funds available to do the 5 and 6 that they had planned. Now, whether that leaves money allowed to do 6% for non-VRS employees, that's even another whole class of folks there that they have. I can't determine, but we do know that by his own numbers, they had $1.88 million coming from state, and we cut that ours back by $350, which means they have a net increase of about $1.5 million by the school superintendent's numbers to us at a work session.
But if the motion to adopt the budget for the schools at our last meeting specifically included funding for those, it is, and I understand, but it is purely our intention to say, we're giving you money for the 5%, 6% rate. And if that doesn't happen, that's something I can't control. Okay.
That is correct.
Okay. Okay.
Mike? Yep, I'm sorry. Mr. Taylor?
Okay, as far as the and I hear what you were saying, Mr. Thomas. I think you're saying what the entire board is saying. I don't think there's anybody up here who would not like to see the teachers, paraprofessionals, whatever, in the school system get a raise. We've said that over and over again. But we're not the school board. And unfortunately, that's not our job. Our job is to try to provide as much funding as we can to qualify or to help the school system to provide a quality education for children, as well as to look after our employees. And we've done that. We've done that with these numbers. And out of $39 million, $350,000 is not going to break here. And folks can come in here and pretend, and we talk about playing games. I worked with the school system for 33 years. There's nothing that I won't do, not just for our schools, any school system. But I know out of almost a $40 million budget, $350,000 is not going to stop you from doing what you need to do, especially when in the 33 years I worked with the school system, I never saw a year when there wasn't $400,000 left over anyway. And there's going to be money left over in that budget this year. If it's not, it's the only year since I've been around that has not happened. And we have basically said that you can have that money. Well, we haven't said it as a board, but it's been our policy to let them have that money. And when we look at what we've already funded, and we look at their year-end balance, there's no reason why they should not be able to do that. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. My question is to you and Mrs. Hatcher. Oh, there you are. I'm not sure.
I didn't move.
Whether you've determined. What are we doing? What are we doing for our hourly employees? Yeah, that are not on VRS, right? Not on VRS. Are we looking at some type of increase for those people?
Not that we've put in the budget.
The budget was initially built on no raises for anybody. The only reason this 5-6 came up was because it was mandated something under VRS for the by the state, and so they were.
Which was after when we presented the budget.
After we presented the whole budget.
This is where we got caught up last year with the landfill workers were not included because they're all hourly. And according to this, they wouldn't get anything.
No, they're not supposed to.
And keep in mind, the 1% raise is not going to work out to that.
Right.
Most people will be.
We're just trying to make it
even.
Yeah.
Harmless. They
Right,
might,
we're not talking about, but,
trying to make it a wash.
I just think we need to make all of it.
right.
Employees.
I don't think we're talking, Mr. Chairman, we're not talking about the VRS 1%. I think we're talking about those employees who are non-VRS employees.
that's correct. And
So-
there's no increase for them. That was not built into the budget.
Do you?
What?
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Underwood.
I guess my question is then, can we look at a budget that looks at an increase for county employees who are non-VRS?
That certainly can be done.
The numbers, Mrs. Hatcher, and you may not have them, but I asked you, I think I asked you, Ms. Hatcher, about what kind of scenarios could we look at as far as the part-time people were concerned. Did we look at a 1% increase?
I looked at a 1% and a 2%.
All right, and a 1%, do you recall what that cost the county?
Let me see if I have it.
We did it last year in July.
We did last year, July.
We didn't do an increase.
I don't think 1% is enough.
I was trying to look up what it was last year.
There's a lot of
That's what happened.
They were right, but they got something after that. Yeah.
They got half of the bonus the other folks.
I don't have it with me, but I want to say it was under 20,000.
I was thinking it was around $18,000, $19,000 as well.
Mr. Chairman, again, I just would have to believe that I think it would only be fair to look at giving county employees who are non-VRS a pay raise, particularly if it's 1% basically equals 20,000. Then I think we should look at. I'm saying 3 to 5%.
Well, my only problem with 3 to 5%, Mr. Underwood, is the fact that we're not doing that for our other county employees. We're basically looking at a 1% over and above what they're going to have to pay for their, VRS. And the 1% is not really going to be a full 1% because their,
No.
you know, their FICA and other taxes will go, payroll taxes will go up. So, you know, as much as I want to do for the people that are on hourly, because a lot of them at the minimum wage, and I understand that completely, I just think we need to try to